Okay, well, here we are again, starting a new quarter. Um, we are in the first week, and today I'm going to make sure, let's see, somebody's mic is open. Need to mute your mic. Okay, the mic was closed. Okay, I just muted it. Okay. So anyway, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to get started. And I'm going to take today, and this will probably be one of the longer, actually the longest one of each of the lectures that we will do because it's an open house. I go over the expectations for this course, and you're going to find that this course is a little different from other courses that you may have had. And it's more akin to an independent studies course almost, except they throw us in as professors to touch bases with you during certain weeks. So let's go ahead and let's get started here. Let me share my screen. That is not what I wanted to share. That's what I wanted to share. Okay. So as you can see who I am, I have added my phone number. Though I've had it before, this quarter I decided I would add it. And then I added more to my statement. Students can feel free to call me, text me, or email me any hour of the day except the 25th hour of the day. Most of you in this class have had me for other classes and know exactly that I mean that and that I respond pretty quickly. And then also I've added APA and critical thinking are very important in the grading of all assignments, as those of you who have had me know that I'm very serious about those two issues because they help build your preparation for transferring into the workforce. And in this course that you're taking now, that's pretty much what we're doing is getting you ready for that. So, okay, let's go down. Okay, why is that on that side? Okay, this should be on the other side. I don't know why it's over here. Anyway, additional course information. Yeah, that should be over here on the right side. I don't know why, for some reason or other, it's showing up on the left side, but I will go back and see why. So anyway, reminding you that you're required to conduct research for all papers. That means the sole source of your papers cannot be the textbook. By the way, you don't have that problem in this course because up front I will tell you there is no textbook for this course. As I said, this is pretty much a hands-on course where you're guided by me to help you fill in the blanks. And what you're doing is you're really preparing to go out into the workforce. Some of you are getting your associates, and then some of you getting your bachelor's. And at any rate, some of you will continue with your associates to your bachelor's after that. But anyway, you will lose 2 points if you don't conduct research. All written assignments should be in APA format. That means citations in the body of the paper and references at the end. It also means other things if you look at the APA, but these are the two main things that I look for. Is your font should be 12-point Roman, and your margins should be one on each side, one on the bottom, and you'll see all of that when you look at APA if you're not familiar with it, but it's very, very, very important. You will also lose 1 point if you don't provide a cover sheet for all written assignments. And then these are some details and information that I provide to you to help you. If you have trouble with APA, I am going to be paying attention, and I will be recommending more students to tutor match with our student tutors who are adept at helping you correct your problems with APA. And then I have some articles in here, which many of you are familiar with. And then there's a video about critical thinking. And I invite you to just copy and paste this and take a look at it, okay? Followed by your rubrics. Your rubrics consist of your written assignments each week. So for this week, then versus now, explain 3 components of the criminal justice system, explain which field interest you choose and why you choose that, 10 points for explaining relevant, significant events for each decade of your field, and then your APA, 5 points. And all you're familiar with that for a total of 30 points. And then you see, I sent you copies of these rubrics as well. Some students asked me where they were. They're on the cover page. And each week you will see, and going all the way down to week 5, written assignment. Okay, then your field progress report, so that you let me know what you're doing. Don't just wait till the last minute. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes, the field progress report. Week 5, week 8, and then finally week 11, the report is done. So 5, 8, and 11. Before that, you should be working towards getting that done. Very important, okay? And then, like I said, the best way to get a good grade for these assignments is to satisfy the requirements of the module, which happens to fall in the criteria section here, and to get the maximum number of points. And then the required page count. So in the module itself, it tells you the page count. For example, when we get to week 1, I'll show you it. But when are they due? They are all due on Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, with the exception of the last week. So let's take a look at the course calendar. Here we go. And here it is, right here. Tells you that your fieldwork component is what we discussed in Module 1. Your initial posts that are due Tuesdays. Your reply posts are due Saturdays, unless I've provided you details different than that. And for some of you, I will. And then open house, which is taking place right now. And so your written assignment is 1 written assignment plus your discussion posts that are due. And for most of you, it will be due Sunday, okay? Most of you, all right? And then each week, the calendar tells you what the steps are. Now, we will have now, be aware of the fact that we're having the open house today, which counts as a lecture. The next one we'll have in week 3, which will be the 18th in this course, will be on Wednesdays. And you'll discover all of them would be Wednesdays. So why didn't I have lecture scheduled for Wednesday this week? because it was a holiday yesterday, and I didn't want to do that to you. And so anyway, that's why we're doing it today. So generally, you'll see Wednesdays all the way down. Okay? All right. So now let's go back to the course homepage, because at the course homepage, there's something that I didn't go down to show you, and I'll go now. It's after the rubrics, and that's this. You got a discussion rubric also here, letting you know when the live lectures take place, 6:30 to 7:30, and today will be a little longer beginning today. And then today is an open house. Remaining lectures will take place as indicated in this next paragraph. Weeks 3, 6, 8, and 10 will take place on Wednesdays, 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Now, you must attend the live lectures or view the archive. I will provide a key word that if you, for example, were not in the live lecture, and then you should be able to provide it easily if you were in it, then I will give you your points then for it. And then under recordings, at the end of the day, I will archive and put the link for the open house, and then each week thereafter. So I wanted to make sure that you are on top of that as well. So let's take a little bit of a look at the syllabus. The syllabus provides you with some information, provides you with my name, my phone number as on the course homepage, email address. You could email me without the 2, and I will get it also. And then this reminds you of what I talked about earlier about research and about having cover sheets, and also about APA, requiring APA format for all written assignments again. So now you will look at here and you will see the requirements are to do discussion posts, and you're very familiar with discussion posts, so I don't have to elaborate on, and most of you know my policy about how I grade them. The best way to get the highest grade is to put reliable posts, submitted on time, and according to the date that it's due for you, and then also to make sure that you provided on the date, like for example, this week they're due Tuesdays, every week they're due Tuesdays, and then your reply posts are due Saturdays. Try to submit as many posts on the reply posts as you can, not for extra grade, but it makes the discussion forum better. And so I check them, and then I reply, and sometimes I post my own thing in there as well. Okay? And as a student has asked me before, the policy with this college, and this is at Rasmussen, is indicated in our syllabus. And so APA is the style and the standard. And it tells you a little bit about the APA, and then tells you that if you have some need for help, library resources page in your student portal or the resources tab, but also in my course on the cover sheets as well. So APA is very, very, very important, as I have stressed that. Okay, then this tells you about your discussion posts. Again, Tuesdays at midnight, Saturdays for your reply posts, except when we get to week 11. Don't worry about that right now. We got a little ways to go before we get to that. Okay. And then now, let's look at the grading criteria. For discussions, you get 110 points. You get 20 points for no 10 points. No, what is it? 5, 10, 10 points each week. Okay, 5 for your initial post, 5 for your reply post. I think I'm doing that right. Yeah, that's 10 times 11, 110, and it constitutes 17.6% of your grade. Your biggest category are your written assignments, which is almost half of your grade. And I'm going to talk to you about how to make sure you do those well and get good grades there. Your fieldwork project consists of 90 points total, or 14.4%. Your assessment at the end, in week 11, there is a assessment. Now, it is a test or assessment that is not timed. It is not timed. But, you do that week 11 to make sure make sure it's in by the last day to get your 100 points, because you don't want to lose those 100 points, because that's 16% of your grade. And then your live lectures, you get 5 points for each of the 6 lectures, including today, which is a small percentage. And maybe that's why some students don't really pay as much attention to it, but I would say to you that since we don't have residential lectures, that the closest that you're going to get is me doing these live lectures and going over the assignments, giving you some pointers to help you and guide you. And that's what I will be doing in each of the lectures. Okay? So now let's look at our grade scale. I say this every quarter in every class. My goal is to get you A's and B's. A's and B's. I say to students over and over and over, and never fails, that still someone reaches out to me and asks me the question, how do I get a C in your class, Professor Wright? I will not answer that. I refuse to answer it because you don't need me to help you be a C student. What you want me to do is help you become an A or B student. The optimal is A, but B is the lowest level that I really would like to see you go to. One lands you on the dean's list, that's the A's, and one lands you on the honor roll. Either one is good and beneficial in terms of giving you opportunities for employment in the future, and your GPA would be high as well. So there we go. Let's not even discuss anything below 80%. Okay? I will respond to your emails very quickly, as you all already know. I provided my contact information on the syllabus and on the home page, and that I'm very, very student-oriented. So now let's talk about 2 things on here before we get to the module itself. We have what we call transferable skills at this institution, which many of you have heard over and over and over, and they consist of communication, critical thinking, digital fluency, diversity and teamwork, ethics, and professional responsibility, and information literacy. Each of these transferable skills are reasons why the assignments are written and laid out for you to give you an opportunity to exercise them. One of the first ones, communication. Written and oral communication is critical in all fields, but it is essential in criminal justice. As I often remind students, I was a lawyer for many years, a criminal defense lawyer, and your reports that were written, regardless of what area you ended up in, would be presented in court, and that defense attorneys have a real way to get you squirming in your seat by pointing out bad grammar, misspellings, misinformation, not accurate information in there to their benefits. And it's fair game. But I bring to the table to help you, because I was not only that, I was a police officer, I was an investigator, I was a paralegal, what they call a paralegal now, except they didn't call it that then. I did all of those things. And so your communication skills are essential and very, very, very important. You have to be able to communicate with people from various backgrounds and communities. And if you don't speak the various languages, you have to be able to still reach them with your body language or written communication. The bottom line is it's important. Critical thinking, I've already stressed the importance of that on my homepage. Critical thinking is essential. It gives you an opportunity to be able to demonstrate in your papers your creativity, your ideas that you have about the assignments themselves. Of course, though, with critical thinking, you want to make sure that you support your positions with information that you discovered from research. You also want to be able to accurately provide the citations in the body and the references at the end, because those are sources that let the reader know where you got your information. But we don't want your papers just to be your research information. We want to see what you have in that sharp mind that we know you have, and translate that into paper. Digital fluency, that goes without saying. You got digital books. You got all kinds of things. Technology is here. Almost everybody has a smartphone or tablet or iPad or some other means of communicating, and it's all digital now. Even your TV stations are all digital. Everything's digital, and so it is important for you to be fluent in using technology, and also appreciating the fact that digital is really something that makes life easier for you. You use it with your research and also with reaching this class in itself, using WebEx and using YouTube, all kinds of things there. Diversity. You will deal with people from various backgrounds. In this class, my rule is this: I don't shoot anybody down for their position. Only thing I say to you is, if you make a statement about a position, support it. And I may disagree with you, but that does not affect your grade because I disagree with you. You're free to express your beliefs and positions. Of course, if I see you going way off, I will respond. If it's in a discussion forum, I'll discuss it in there. If it's something in your written assignment, I will either email you, call you, text you, or send you a message, either way, to make sure that you understand. However, I want you to be able to be free in this class. I want you to feel that you can express yourself, and you feel free to disagree with me. But do so in a professional manner, and respect each other's positions. Don't ridicule anybody in discussion posts or reply posts. Don't do that. And I don't do that to any student, and I won't allow that. But diversity is so important because we're made up of people. This country is really made up of immigrants, people from all over the world, people from different religious beliefs, different lifestyles, social backgrounds, and so forth. And so you need to recognize that that's going to play out in your professional work as well. And then teams, you're going to be working in teams, as you already know. If you're going to be in criminal justice or any other field, you're going to be involved in teamwork. I, as a professor, do teach, but I also am part of what we call the School of Justice Studies team. And we collaborate and put together some of the answers, some of the questions, some of the data, some of the information that we discover that may be valuable in terms of making our courses more up-to-date, so that you'll have up-to-date information. But we work together and respect each other's roles. Ethics, that goes without saying, that you know, you learn how to be an ethical individual, because if you're not, you're going to run into a situation ultimately where you will find yourself in either the wrong side of the law, or either you will find yourself unemployed, or you'll find yourself with a bad grade, you'll find yourself expelled from school. It will just be bad. I always tell students that ethics are so important to me because of the fact that I give you the benefit of the doubt, but you know, don't operate on the basis where you stretch it and you know that you are actually, because sometimes students may get away with something with me, but it will catch up with you. Because I will say this to you, we professors, instructors, teachers communicate with each other in the different courses. And if we see a pattern happening, we come together with that information, and then we recognize that you're operating in an ethical fashion. Professional responsibility, that means abide by the rules. For example, right here in this school, we have a academic policy, which I don't go over in detail, but you're held to that. You want to learn how to operate in a professional fashion so that you are presenting to people professionalism in all of your things that you do. Many of you work now. You have to do that now in your current jobs. You want to do that in your future jobs. And so those are transferable skills that will be indicated too in your assignments as well. And then finally, information literacy. You need to be able to research. You need to be able to find information. Don't just take things at face value. And so you want to be able to look up information, find answers to questions, and utilize those for your benefit in a scholarly, academic fashion. And the statement says students will have opportunity to demonstrate these in courses across the curriculum, this being one of them. Okay? All right, so I'm not going to comment about the attendance policy. I am going to finally complete this syllabus discussion with the late assignment submission policy. It says students may submit assigned work up to 7 days. That means 1 week after the deadline. A 10% penalty is assessed for each day that is late, and an additional 10% for each day it's late. So let's say this. For example, if you have a 25 and you are 1 day late, I could round up to 2.5, but I usually round it down to 2. So let's say, for example, that if you have your paper submitted 3 days late, then you've lost 6 points out of 25. 6 points out of 25. And your grade drops, and it continues to drop. After a while, you don't even have to get to 7 days before you have a failing grade. Now, in some instances, such as late discussion postings, it says students may be asked to complete an alternate assignment. I don't do that. I don't do that. That's a discretionary issue. It said may, but I don't do that. So don't even, you can disregard that statement. So what is your goal? To get your assignments in on time. Now, online discussions conclude at the end of the current module or week. Any discussions after the due date for discussion posts will not be accepted. I will say this, I accept them, but you don't get any points, so it's the same thing. I will say it was a great post, however, it was submitted after the assignments are completed. For example, week 1 discussion forum ends technically Saturday night, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard, but I have a policy that I will give you an opportunity to submit a reply post late on Sunday and then take a point away from it. However, if you submit your initial post and reply posts on Sunday, you will get no points. Because the point of the matter is that your initial post needs to be submitted so students have a chance to respond to or say something to it. After that week is over, students are on the next thing, as I am also. Okay? Now, that's it as far as now. The other thing I want to say that you should know is this. Instructors may waive the late penalty in the case of extenuating circumstance as determined by the faculty. That's me. I cannot do it, though, with discussion posts, but I can do it with written assignments. And I have been known to do that because there have been people who have had some things happen to them, and they've not gotten their assignments in by that 7-day period. And if the situation was serious enough and that I operated on it, and most of you already know my policy, I'm very flexible and give you the benefit of the doubt and will help you. Some of you want to submit to me notes from doctors and stuff like that. I don't need that. I don't need that. You're adults. I believe you. I told you we're operating on trust and ethics. And so ethics. And so it's important to me that you understand that. And I will be able to determine if, there are things that happen. One of the things that I will say to you, there have been students who asked me, can they get an extension because they had to work longer hours? I generally can't do that because everybody is going to have that kind of a situation. And I generally don't do that. That's a time management issue that you have to work out yourself. However, though, there are times when things happen. And when things happen that are beyond your control, and you let me know. If I don't know, I can't even consider it. So, then you'll come back weeks later and say, oh, I forgot to tell you a couple weeks ago I had this happen, that happened. It's not going to be acceptable at that particular time there, okay? And I've had some very serious things happen with students, and you guys who are in this class, some of you know if it's happened to you. Then as far as academic integrity policy, take time to read that yourself. It's a document that you need to be familiar with. You need to think about it in terms of when you do your assignments as well. Okay? And so now let's get into our Module 1 this week. And first, let's look at the assignments, which I've already gone over, but I have this habit. Now, you'll see here there's really only two other than the lecture or session today, open house. Now, it tells you to pick a field within the criminal justice area that interests you, such as law enforcement, adult juvenile, or juvenile probation, probation and corrections. That will become the field you will research. Now, you're preparing in your mind here for the field project. We're going to talk about that in more detail in just a minute, so hold on. The one field that you're interested in being employed is the one that should be doing. And so what you're really doing is you're doing some reconnaissance or research information concerning the area where you intend on operating or making a living. And then what does criminal justice mean to you? And when we look in there, and I want to see that, share how the goals of your field evolved over the last 60 years, and read the 4-page paper, properly outline. Now, that doesn't mean give me an outline form. The issues, include that in your paper affecting the system decades, with proper grammar, spelling, and mechanics. That includes APA. Now, one of the things that you need to do is click on this when you get ready to do your assignment, and you will see two things. As soon as it comes up, here we go. you will see the due date. Most of you will have that due date. Some of you will have another due date, but you will know who I'm talking about. 30 points possible for this assignment. And notice this. It tells you exactly the same thing here. And you want to go ahead and follow this. Again, I already gave you the rubric that told you what the assignment is, how to gain those 30 points. How do you maximize your grades? By satisfying each section of that rubric that I shared with you earlier and getting your assignment in on time. That's how you do it. Okay? So this week, we already talked about then versus now. Okay? Because we want to see how your area has changed. And then your discussion posts, many of you have already posted them the day before yesterday, and your reply posts are due Saturday, again, for most of you. And then the live lecture as well. Now, with your live lecture, if you look at this, click on this, you'll see that it is due the 8th. That means that either you will have submitted to me your key word by the 8th, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, which is Sunday. Otherwise, you start to lose points. You go from 5 points to 4 points and all the way down. And you got to have that word in there, okay? So it's very, 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 very important. Okay, let's go back to, now let's get into the lesson content itself. So we're going to talk about a few things, the 3 components of the criminal justice system in your assignments that you have to do. You're going to demonstrate employment in the criminal justice field readiness and identify the importance of hands-on experience. That's why I was telling you this course is pretty much how it operates. Again, it gives you your assignments all over again. Okay? So now, let's spend time before we finish with me telling you about, oh, you know what? Let me digress a minute. I'm sorry, I forgot to do something here. I'm a little off here today, and because it's the way this thing is set up. Reminding you to check your announcements regularly. Give you some APA assistance as well. And then you have your welcome announcements, which you'll see most of the quarter, which gives you a reminder of the things that you should develop as a habit to successfully navigate this course. Again, reminds you about when our live lectures take place, the link for the lectures. Some students have gone to this link like 1 or 2 in the morning, and I've seen it pop up on my phone, but I'm not going to go to the lecture. The lectures take place at the time that they are there. And then each week you will have an announcement or 2. Your main announcement, week 1 announcement, is the topic that we're discussing, and we already discussed the module and the grading rubric. And then the discussion assignment, the relationship between the 3 components. We already discussed the deadlines. The written assignment, we discussed that just a few minutes ago. And then the field work component, which is where I'm at now. And then I want to remind you at the bottom of every one you will see, let's start strong and finish strong. That's an encouragement to you. My motto, adversity is springboard to success. I've shared that in many of my classes. I will share it at the end as well. Okay. So now let's go back to, so every week make sure you check your announcements. That's, announcements and calendars are real important to keeping up with the when assignments are due. Okay. So let's get back to lesson content. Now let's get to where I want to talk about. So in this course, you will have a project, and I've given you the schedule of when these points are due. And this is, as they say, it's a capstone course. Gives you an opportunity to see what you've learned, to prepare you for your postgraduate employment opportunities. And so there is the requirement that you complete this field report, a minimum of 10 hours of field work. These have to be completed with an approved agency of your choice. And, you know, let me know what that agency is. You'll let me know in just a few minutes when we give the steps. And you want to make sure that you are learning as much as you can about the area. Maybe the agency that you already work for, but it may be an agency that you want to go work for. But the field experience is important because it gives you some hands-on experience. Now, these 10 hours can be done over the whole quarter, so you don't have to do it like all in once. Now, because we are talking about things that we have you doing, and we recognize the fact that you learn things by doing them yourself, not just sitting in a classroom or listening to a professor talk to you about your work, but actually getting your hands into the area. In law enforcement, ride-alongs are pretty heavily involved there. Ride-alongs along with some research, looking at some material about the organization and or the field, and presenting some really scholarly resources. And so we want to make sure that you understand what this course is all about. That's why we don't have PowerPoints, because of the fact that this is more of an independent studies type course. That's why we don't have lecture notes, except I go over the information that's in the module, add to them when I talk to you, because the fact that I want to make sure that you understand the importance. So as a result, you will have an opportunity firsthand to work in an agency or organization in your community of your choice. And there are 5 steps that you need to, and always remember these steps. Research and identify a local agency where you could complete the 10 hours. Some of these include, I already said some of these, a ride-along, a series of interviews, or shadow a professional throughout the 10-hour observation. Remember, your paper also should involve some research, dealing with a halfway house. Now, there have been students who run into problems trying to do the halfway house because of some legal privacy issues. So these are just suggestions only. Does generally fit within people who are going to do probation, parole, or something like that. However, there are others. These are just some suggestions. A court proceeding. Someone's already asked me about that, to examine the nature of adjudication in the correction phase, or to talk to a corrections officer, maybe even have a chance to visit. If you have a problem, it says here, important, contact me and let me know of your problem, and I will help you. But usually I will try to talk to you about what I just said earlier in an area that you want to go into. I don't want to send this. This is not a busy work course. This is a course that will help you to sharpen your skills and increase your chances. Some students have written papers, and then they've used those when they did their interviews with employers, which is awesome. And it lets the employer know that you're interested in them, so much to the point that you've done in-depth study and research, you've made some connections and contacts, which brings me to another point, that as you involve yourself with working with someone in the agencies that you're interested in, you open up an opportunity for them to become familiar with you. And trust me, the formula for success is bringing something to the table in terms of education, knowledge, and also contacts, because there's a large number of people, a tremendous number of people vying for spots. So contact the agency by letter or phone call. If you do it by phone call, make sure that you introduce yourself, explain what you're doing. I'm a student at Rasmussen College. I'm in the criminal justice program, and set up a time for completing either the phone call or the letter assignment. And you're not going to keep anybody on the phone 10 hours. But remember, see, your 10 hours don't necessarily have to be just the interview, or that your research also adds up to the 10 hours. So you're encouraged, and you're going to be letting me know if you happen to just go down and just take a peep at those weeks that I shared with you earlier. You'll see what's being required of you. If you're going to do a ride-along or interview between the 4th and 7th module is the time to do it. Don't wait until you get to week 8, week 9. Oh, I haven't had a chance to do it. No, don't do that. You are not to just show up for an agency or request a ride-along or interview. And if you run into a problem as far as ride-along, and most of them, you can communicate with me, or either you can contact your academic dean at your college, and they can let them know that you are registered in this course and that you are completing this as part of your requirements for study in the course that you're in, that contemporary issues in criminal justice. The third step, at least one module before your meeting, send a professional letter, email it, attach it with a PDF document, which I recommend PDF as opposed to, some people send Word documents. I don't like Word documents because they can be changed. Or deliver a professional letter to the contact person that confirms the date and time of your ride-along or interview. Step 4. During your ride-along or whatever you're doing, your visit or interview, pay close attention to what's happening. Ask questions as much as you possibly can. Listen and observe. Take notes as you go. Remember, while conducting, and this is important here, I'm going to read it too, so it's so important. While conducting the field report or field work, professional manner, we already talked about that. Dress to impress. Wear shirts with collars, dress in slacks or pants, no jeans, dress shoes, no tennis shoes. You don't look like you're hanging out with them. You're on an assignment on a professional level. As an academic representative of this college and the program, you're there to observe the system in action as well as to build contacts for future, I already told you, career references, internships, and possible volunteer opportunities. So you can see you're earning your grade by doing that as well. Now you begin to see why the book is not necessary in this particular course. So then the final report is 2 to 3 pages. You can go longer, describing, and this will be due during week 11. Now, and I give you guidance. People says, oh, wow, that's not really that much. No, it's not. But I've seen students go up to 4 or 5 pages, and that's cool. It's okay. They had their citations, their references, they had their research sources, and all of that, all lined up. As a conclusion, write 1 or 2 paragraphs describing how your education prepared you for the type of work that you observed. At this point, you've had courses, some of you in criminal law, some of you in drugs and crime, some of you in corrections. I'm just talking about just some of the courses I've taught. And so there are other courses as well. Be sure to include a cover page with your name, the agency you visited, the date and times of the field work, very critical, so you should be diarying this up, who you interviewed, the contact information for the agency and the person. These should have this on the cover page, okay? And the final thing I'm going to say is that you are strongly encouraged to schedule this as soon as possible. I've already said that. I keep saying it over and over. Try to take your visits between Module 4 and 7. I said that earlier. And then you will then be asked to present your first report during week 5. So don't wait too long. Your final report is due Module 9. I think I said 11, but I mean Module 9. But at any rate, the point of the matter is follow it according to schedule. And that's the project. I've gone over how your assignments operate as well. I've covered everything possible about what is necessary in order to perform well in this class. So now I want to go back into the classroom, and I want to share with you the reason why I say adversity is a springboard to success. It all started back when I was about 7 years old in 1957. My dad and I had gone to it was Memorial Day of '57. We went to a game, went to a baseball game, and we found that we came back home. It was myself and 5 younger sisters. I was 7 as the oldest. We're in bed, and a fight broke out in the house, and a man who had been renting a room in the house and my dad were engaged in a fight. Well, the man took out a knife and stabbed my dad in the forehead. And my dad, I personally will never forget it because I have a photographic memory, and I remember that sight today. I mean, it was 61 years ago for me. I'm 68 now. And so, anyway, he ran out of the house. My dad died. And the man did not go to jail. He ended up living in the house with us openly. He came out of the room that he had and started sleeping with my mother. I would discover years later the reason why that happened is because my dad confronted the guy about what was going on with him carrying on with my mom. And my mom was in love with this guy, so she stood up for him and said my dad was the aggressor, and that wasn't true. But at any rate, the way the system operated at that time, they did what they call nolli prosta case, which a Latin term means they did not prosecute, and the case was closed. And so anyway, he continued living with us, this man, and over the next, 60 to 62, which was roughly 5 years, he used to beat my mother profusely. I grew up in a home of domestic violence from that period where the man would he would beat her so bad that her face would be disfigured. He would go to jail. She would go back and get him. He would go for short periods of time back in those days. Domestic violence wasn't as serious of a crime back in those days, if you want to really know the truth. And it wasn't dealt with as well. So he would end up back in the house, and it would happen again. And so, in the meantime, my mother had another child, which would have been my sixth sister. And then the area was so bad that we were living in, it changed over. It was a Jewish community when we first moved there in 1950, but it changed over by 62 and was pretty bad. There were gangs. However, though, I was one of those individuals that because they knew what had happened with my dad, something highly unusual happened. They made a deal not to touch me, to recruit me, because I was the last male of the house. They didn't count the guy that was living there. And so anyway, we moved from the area anyway and moved to an area called Terrytown, a community in Gary, Indiana, nice area. And it was really nice. In fact, a few blocks away from where we lived were these kids who used to be in the yard playing music, and they lived on Jackson Street. And yes, they were the Jacksons. So it was a nice community, Little League. Um, it was just nice. And so anyway, my mother got a business going there, a restaurant downtown Gary, before it became pretty bad. And Memorial Day of 1963, my mother left me in charge. By this time, she had one more child who was born in 62. So thus I had 7 younger sisters. And I was 13 years old. Well, my mother left me in charge of the house, and she left out. And the next morning, I woke up, there was smoke in the house. And I opened up, the door, and I saw the car that my mother had, and I saw it drive away. Well, anyway, I looked in her room, and she hadn't been there. Her bed was still made, but that wasn't unusual because she would sometimes stay out like that, and I would take care of the house. So we went about the business of doing the things of the day. I was taking care of the household, taking care of my baby sister, and everybody in the house. And sometime during that day, about midday, 2 men showed up and announced themselves as Gary police officers and announced that my mother was found dead on the south side of Chicago. I lost it for a minute and started screaming this guy's name. And the police then said, who's the oldest? I said, I am. And then I looked around. I had to gather my wits and began to just realize I was now what they had. No father, no mother. And so anyway, we stayed there, and one of my aunts came and took us to Chicago, stay at her house in the south side of Chicago, an area called Chatham. And she didn't really want us there. They were trying to determine what they were going to do with all 8 of us. And we were forced to do manual labor while her kids would go to the YMCA and things like that. I remember the situation was so bad that they would even have pizza delivered to them, and then they would give us the crust. Pretty bad, guys. And so I went through that. And then another aunt came from out of town who had stayed with us for a little while in Gary, Indiana. Then she went back home just before my mother was killed. And she came and she decided she was not going to let us get split up. Took us, had a house built in a south suburban area. Well, it was really not suburban. It was South Chicago area called Maple Park, which is the Morgan Park area. People in Chicago are familiar with that area. At any rate, we moved into a house that was built for us all to live. And so anyway, when we moved in there in '64. I discovered that the man who had killed my mom and dad had pled guilty to killing my mother, and that they were going to sentence him to 10 years. Now, that wasn't acceptable, but then it was brought to my attention that 10 meant 5, and that for good behavior he could serve 3.5 years. And ultimately, that's what he ended up serving. I was very, very troubled. I said, this doesn't make any sense. And people would tell me, well, there's nothing you can do about it. That's just the way it is. I'm not one of these kind of people that accept that as an answer. And I continued just being troubled. And when I get troubled, I start talking and asking questions. And so it was brought to my attention by someone. They said, that's the way the law operates. And I said, tell me about that. And they started talking to me about the legal system. So I went to the library at my school and asked the librarian for a book about lawyers or attorneys, and they had a little book. And I checked that book out and read that book overnight, cover to cover. And guys, the next day, anybody I met, this 14-year-old kid said, hey, my name is Richard Wright, and I'm going to be a lawyer. And so as it was, after that, I continued living with my aunt and uncle. I had a lot of trouble with my uncle especially, wanting me to take his name. And I didn't want to take his name because they were going to adopt all of the kids. And then what ended up taking place is the girls were adopted, and I was illegally adopted and did not know it. By the way, guys, I didn't know it until I was 34 years old, and I was out of law school before I got a chance to get it fixed. At any rate, it was really bad. The man and I didn't get along. He wouldn't even help me and so I took a job as a paper boy, and then I became a grillman at McDonald's. I was 17 years old. And so I ended up finding myself in a situation where, oh, by the way, when I was 14, I heard this lady on the radio and I liked her, and I went and found her and asked her to be my mother. We became friends. And she stayed in my life and still in my life now. In fact, when I was 34, when I found out about the problems, she legally adopted me to help me fix that issue. She had been in my life all of those years. So at any rate, I ended up going through high school. I was not like the top of the class because I had all kind of issues happening. There were still some domestic issues happening at my home between my aunt and uncle. There were guns pulled on us, and it was some real bad stuff. So, but I persevered, and I continued reaching out to people outside the house, particularly the church, and I found myself in a situation where I would not lose focus on what I knew I had to do. So I ended up, meeting some friends, and I decided when it came time for me to graduate, the church offered me a 4-year scholarship. It just had to have a signature from who I didn't know was actually had legally adopted me, but the person had to sign, and that was my aunt. She refused to sign because her husband said no. So I said, well, I'm going to graduate and go on to a junior college, and I'm going to go on and make it. So at any rate, I found myself in a situation where I graduated from high school, and I had, reached a stage in life where I really wanted to get a family going, and I wanted a real one. I didn't want to go through all the nonsense I had gone through. So I did something that was not was ill-advised, but I did it anyway. I went and I got married right out of high school. And then after that, oh, by the way, before I got married, when I graduated from high school, my friends, their mother knew someone who was a secretary in a big law firm. And in that law firm, she said she could get me a job as a messenger working in the mailroom. I was ecstatic. The job didn't pay much, but all I needed was an opportunity to get my foot in the door. And I became a messenger at the law firm, got married, and introduced myself as Richard Wright, and that I was going to be a lawyer. All the lawyers I got to know and meet. And so as a result of that, I registered in night school. Guys, I didn't have a car. In fact, I didn't even have a driver's license because of the problems I had gone through. And so anyway, I found myself in a situation where I was married, and then here comes one kid, and then a second kid, and I worked 40 hours a week, took 2 buses and a train. And so at any rate, I found myself where I had to work and keep working. And I did, and I stayed focused in it. I stayed on the honor roll and the dean's list. I used to study on the L train and the bus. And so the law firm, while I was a messenger, I took a package one day to one of the clients. It was McDonald's Corporation, and it took it to a guy named Ray Kroc. I didn't know who that was, but anyway, I ended up meeting Ray Kroc, and he actually made me his personal messenger whenever the law firm had packages. So he sat and talked with me many a times. We went out to eat and spend some other times, and he would encourage me to keep moving forward. So anyway, the law firm, seeing what my progress was being made and that I was moving forward and that I was focused, and I would come to work dressed in a shirt and tie. All the other guys in the mirror room wore casual stuff, and I wore a shirt and tie. Didn't wear a jacket, but they paid attention to that. And so at any rate, it came an opening in the file department, and I took a job as a file clerk. And then Mr. Kroc called me there to congratulate me, and he realized he wouldn't see me as a messenger, but that he would see me periodically when he'd come to the law firm. At any rate, the point of the matter is that I continued moving forward under adverse situation and circumstances. Like I said, wasn't making a whole lot of money, but I knew that this was the path that would get me there. I was in the door. I was making myself known, and I was presenting myself in a professional manner. And so I was working there in the file department, and then there came an opportunity where something happened with the law librarian, and the law librarian passed away, and guess who they came to? Yes, me. I became the law librarian, and I was getting even closer. So I would sit in the law library, and I would listen to the lawyers talk. And then my job was to be custodian of the books, file the books away, and things like that. But here's what happened. I decided I was going to read some of this stuff. I taught myself how to do legal research. I was already adept at writing. So I just saw the methods that they used, and I stayed focused with it. And then one day, one of the lawyers and the team were discussing some points of law, and I already knew the system that they used for research. They didn't know this. So they went to lunch, and they came back. I had stacked up all the precedents, the cases that applied to the points that they were going to be needing. And so one of the lawyers came back to me, and I took my lunch to do that. One of the lawyers came and says, Richard, we can't find any of the cases. They're all missing. There's a vacant spot. I says, they're over there on that table with the legal pad that says do not disturb. And they opened them up and they said, you got the cases? You got it on point? Where'd this come from? Who did this? I said, I did it. So the lawyer took me to the senior partner, and the senior partner said, he said to the senior partner, we're wasting our money. This kid knows how to do legal research. There was no such thing as paralegals at that time. So I said, yeah, I know how to do that. And so they hired someone to take care of the books, and they started me in what they call a law clerk. At this time, it's now called paralegal. And I started doing research. I started writing memos. I started going to court with them to see how they were doing things. I went to real estate closings. I did all of this stuff. But I still, was getting closer. In the meantime, I had left junior college. I had gone to a junior college because no one would help me. And then I transferred over to a 4-year institution called Roosevelt University. And I was studying. And so it came to a point in time for me, I knew that what I wanted to do, and I started to look at law schools. I took the LSAT. I didn't do the best, but I decided I'm going to apply to one law school and one law school only, and that was Northwest University School of Law, one of the top schools in the country. And people say this is a very difficult school to get in. I don't accept how difficult something is. If one person got in other than me, I knew I could do it. So I ended up applying, submitted a big package. The law school application is about 6 or 8 pages long at that time, but I submitted a big package. I mean, it was in a big box, and I had sent over by one of the lawyers. Well, I got a phone call from the law school asking me to come. They said, we don't grant interviews because we have thousands of people. I found out that for 250 seats, there were pretty close to 10,000 people applying. So that's a pretty tough situation. So I went and I talked to them and told them about myself. I explained what I went through. I explained what my goals were. And they said, well, we can't tell you that you're admitted, but what we can tell you is that you'll be hearing from us very, very soon. And I think you're going to like what you hear. So it was kind of informal way of telling me, welcome. A week later, I got a letter accepted, allowing me to go into the school. So I was all this ecstatic. I was excited. I went to a summer program to help me to a 6-week program called CLEO, Council on Legal Education Opportunities, to help me to earn some money because Northwestern is a very expensive school and still is. So I ended up doing that. One of the first things they told me is that for the first year you cannot work. We don't have night school. So the person I was married to at that time, that I had the 2 kids by, she was a teacher. And she was working as a teacher. She had graduated in '75 from her school, and I graduated from Roosevelt in '75 with honors in political science. At any rate, minoring in business. And so I got accepted in law school. It was pretty tough. Then it turned out that that was the first year that Chicago Public Schools had a strike and lost all income. I couldn't go to work. I was ready to leave law school, but I had a professor, Professor Joyce Hughes. She's still there now. She said, I want to talk with you before you do that. Took me in her office, stood in front of the door and told me, you're not leaving here until you change your mind. And of course, she's very firm, and I ended up changing my mind and said, I'm gonna stick it out. And she was there to help me and encourage me, and I, 3 years later, graduated from law school. While I was there, though, I met a classmate of mine whose dad was a distinguished criminal defense lawyer. His name was R. Eugene Pencham. And Judge Pencham, I call him Judge because later on he became a judge, encouraged me to get more in depth to what happened with my mother and father. So he took me to the criminal courts building and helped me to get the files on what exactly happened, and I learned what all the legal steps that took place. And then he encouraged me. He says, you might have a propensity to want to be criminal prosecutor, which I did not. He said, if you be a defense attorney, you will learn more. So ultimately, I took on the task of becoming a criminal defense lawyer and did pretty well with that. Pretty well. By the time I graduated, here comes a third child along. And so anyway, I would, as I start my career, 40 years ago this year, June 17th was the exact 40 years. And so I began doing other law. I did radio work. I did legal issues on radio. I did all of this. I left the big law firm after going to work for 2 years as a lawyer from 78 to 80. In 80, I left to work with some other lawyers. And in around 81, I started my own practice. And my biggest area was criminal law. And I was good at it because of my memory. Photographically, I could look at my notes and talk to the juries. And I love juries. And I did very well with the jurors, extremely well. And so I was really successful with that. In the meantime, I ended up 91 to 93 going to seminary because ministry became important to me, and began to pursue Master Arts in Religion at Trinity Evangelical Divinity School, which you see that in the course homepage, in the student lounge. So I was moving along. I was doing well at it. And then when I was 50 years old, so anyway, I went, my first wife and I, we went different directions. There were some beliefs that we had that created a barrier, so we ended up going our different ways, and we had the kids. So at any rate, I ended up going on, getting serious in ministry, and I found myself in 1994 meeting a young lady, and she would become my wife, and she's still my wife as of today. Be 24 years, July the 28th. And so I persevered through a lot of adversity while I was in law school and college. There were times when I ran out of money. This was before I married to my current wife, and the electricity would go out. I'd study by candlelight. The truth of the matter is that I was on a mission, and I wasn't going to let anything stop me. And so I then, along the way in 89, became a village attorney in a tough town in the south suburbs. They said that it was a tough job. I said, okay, I took it. But I wanted to carry a gun. They said you had to be a policeman. So I became a part-time police officer, went to the academy and training and all of that. And then finding out that there was corruption, the chief had to step down and a new chief came in, and I became an investigator. And then there were all kinds of things that happened. And so here I am, finding myself as a defense lawyer, finding myself as a police officer, having been a paralegal, then investigator. And then I find myself in 2000 retiring from being a lawyer to pursue a more serious career in ministry. I did several things. I ran a janitorial company. I taught special education. I ended up doing closings for title companies as a little side job. And then finally in 2011, someone told me about this school called Rasmussen, which I had never heard of. and I took the job that they hired me to teach residentially at the Romeoville campus, teaching business law. And I taught that, but I told the dean that I was a criminal justice person. So I ended up staying there, starting to teach criminal justice. I never forget my second semester there, I taught a course in domestic violence, which I was able to share my story to my students, and it was a powerful residential class. Then around 2012, 2013 rather, somewhere close to the end of 2012, they announced that it was going to be, we were going online. And so I had to learn that system. And so I did that as an adjunct or part-time professor. And I worked hard on the campus. I used to work hard as some of the full-timers. So then finally came a full-time opening for a state program coordinator for Illinois, where you would be in charge of the criminal justice program in Illinois, 4 campuses: Romeoville, Mokina, Tinley Park, Aurora, and Rockford. And so I got the job, and I stayed on that job and began teaching more online as well. And then I ended up, they changed the role, and since that time I started out as an associate professor, then assistant professor, and now I'm Professor Dr. Richard Wright. So that's where I am now. So I have a passion for what I do, and I expect my students to be good professionals, because I want to plug up those holes. One of the things I never did as a criminal defense lawyer is represent somebody in domestic violence case. Obviously, you know why. But the point of the matter is that I want you to be good criminal justice professionals. I always shot for the stars, and I did pretty well, very well. And so I encourage you, as you go through this next 11 weeks, to remember the goal that I've set forth before you. And so I'm going to say good night. I'll see you guys in the 3rd week. But I got a word for you: open house. That's the word I want you to give me for your points. Open house. Say good night.